Sun TV. The English cricket team went from world champions in 2019 to being eliminated in the World Cup 2023 in the group stages. Cricket was invented in England, and the first reference to cricket being played as an adult sport was in 1611, and in the same year a dictionary defined cricket as a boys' game. Village cricket had developed by the middle of the 17th century, and the first English county teams were formed in the second half of the century. The first known game in which the teams use county names is in 1709. In the first half of the 18th century, cricket established itself as a leading sport in London and the southeastern counties of England. Rolling the ball along the ground was superseded sometime after 1760, when bowlers began to pitch the ball, and in response to that innovation, the straight bat replaced the old hockey stick style of bat. Cricket was introduced to North America via the English colonies as early as the 17th century, and in the 18th century it arrived in other parts of the globe. It was introduced to the West Indies by colonists and to India by British East India Company mariners. It arrived in Australia almost as soon as colonization began in 1788, and the sport reached New Zealand and South Africa in the early years of the 19th century. In most countries, for many years, the locals weren't allowed to play the sport, as it was the preserve of the white English colonizers only. 1980 saw the first coloured player to represent England, who was a black cricketer named Roland Butcher. The question is, why is there racism in English cricket? Is it to do with the superiority complex brought about by the British Empire, or by advocating the theory of evolution? The theory of evolution, as taught by Charles Darwin, professed that the white man was superior to other coloured races. Darwin's teachings typifies the racism inherent in a lot of human evolutionary progressions. Modern-day Africans are depicted as inferior, while the pinnacle of human evolution is a white, European-looking man. The subtle message here is that lighter skin means that the individual is more evolved. There is no question that evolution, when applied to explaining the origins of humankind from its inception, was a racist idea. In the CMI documentary, The Voyage That Shook the World, the Cambridge-educated evolutionary historian Peter Bowler stated when talking about Darwin that by the time he writes The Descent of Man in 1871, it's pretty clear that he by that time shares the growing suspicion or conviction of many Europeans. The non-white races simply do not have the capacity to be elevated properly into civilized human beings, that they are mentally and morally at a more limited level. In a sense, they are stuck at an early stage in the biological evolution of the human species. O mankind, indeed we created you from a male and a female, and made you nations and tribes, that you may identify yourselves with one another. Indeed, the noblest of you in the sight of Allah is the most God-wary among you. Indeed, Allah is all-knowing, all-aware. Excerpt from the last sermon of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. All mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab has any superiority over an Arab. Also, a white has no superiority over a black, nor a black has any superiority over a white, except by piety and good action. The Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket said that the game must urgently reform after finding that racism was entrenched, women were marginalized, and that class barriers had been ignored. Racism, class-based discrimination, elitism, and sexism are widespread and deep-rooted. The game must face up to the fact that it's not just banter, or just a few bad apples, said ICEC Chair Cindy Butts. Discrimination is both overt and baked into the structures and processes within cricket. Interest in the review soared following a racism scandal at Yorkshire County Cricket Club, exposed by former player Azim Rafiq, which resulted in 6 ex-cricketers being sanctioned. The ICEC said submissions of evidence had increased significantly after Rafiq gave damning personal testimony of the abuse he had suffered throughout his career to MPs in November 2021. A parliamentary committee later recommended withholding state funding from the game until it had proven its ability to tackle racism. As part of the review, The ICEC received evidence from more than 4,000 people, including players and coaches at all levels of the sport. 1 and 2 of those who responded to its call said they had experienced some form of discrimination. One respondent, described as an Asian Pakistani former player, said his teammates had thrown bacon sandwiches at him and poured alcohol over him. All the stories that Azim Rafiq talks about, that all happened to me. All the abuse, the isolation, the hatred, he said. Here's a list of the former colonies who beat England for the first time in history. Afghanistan beat England in 2023 by 69 runs. India recorded their first Test victory against England at Madras in 1952. Pakistan first beat England in 1954 in their 4th Test match. Bangladesh first beat England in 2010. Sri Lanka beat England in a Test series in 1992. West Indies first defeated England in 1950 in the second Lord's Test. Netherlands beat a strong England 11 in 1989. South Africa recorded their first Test win against England in 1906. Zimbabwe beat England for the first time in the 1983 World Cup. New Zealand beat England in 1978. Australia recorded its first win against England in 1877. Ireland first celebrated victory of the Gentlemen of Ireland over England in 1862. It's time for racism to be fully eradicated in English cricket as well as the world. How's that?